What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now Plus. I'm Alex, and in this video, we got to talk about Silent Hill yet again. Now, I know some people maybe don't like that I talk about Silent Hill every couple weeks, but let's be honest with ourselves. There's some things picking up. Now, for the longest time, we've actually, I don't know the other channels, but I've talked about Silent Hill for a very, very long time. This rumored game, not Silent Hill in general, but these rumored games, or the rumored game, like plural or singular, I've talked about it for quite some time. Over the last few days, we've gotten, I would say, some pretty huge stuff. So it's important to remember where we came from. I'll talk about the new stuff first, and then we'll kind of compare it to what we've heard in the past. So pretty much, here's what we got. Bloober Team, the makers of the Medium, they made Layers of Fear, all that stuff, okay? They have said over the last couple of days that they are working on, over the last year, they're working on a brand that is very, very exciting, and that they'll announce, they'll talk about it obviously later, but they can't talk about it yet. They're excited. They're excited about who they're working with to make this game, okay? That's what we know. Now, that doesn't immediately lead you to Silent Hill, but it gets you, I would say, reasonably close. We know it's horror. They talked about action, that it's going to be a little bit more action-oriented. That very much sounds like, okay, if you took the Medium, now this is, by the way, we can talk about what we think about Bloober Team, later, but, the Medium, and then you add a bunch of action components, obviously polish it up. Do you get close to Silent Hill? I say, that's kind of what they're hinting at, all right? And also, I think there was a leak out there. I think maybe it was Video Game Chronicles or somebody did kind of inadvertently say yeah, they are one of the ones that are making a Silent Hill game. Okay, so they're making a game. They're making ideally, possibly, whatever word you want to use, they're making a Silent Hill game. Then we got word that Konami is 100% outsourcing their properties, Metal Gear, Silent Hill, so on, so on. They're letting developers out there do it. Okay, and now this is kind of that circling back to what we've talked about before. For a long time, we have heard that Sony worked out a deal to basically, whatever word you want to use, rent the IP of Silent Hill. They gave it to their own team. Konami would make a little bit of that money. Sony obviously has to pay for the whole development, and that's how it worked, okay? That's what licensing of, would be. So when we hear that Konami is now outsourcing Metal Gear, Silent Hill, so on, that very much, I would say, reconfirms what we had heard a long time ago. Now, we go to Video Game Chronicles, where they said, I believe it was Thursday, maybe even Friday, where they said that there is a prominent Japanese team that is making a Silent Hill reboot. And they also, in that article, hinted that there is more than one Silent Hill game happening at the same time, which leads people to Bloober Team, okay? Now, prominent Japan studio, Sony Japan, okay? And that's the one that people have long rumored to have been the one that's been making the Silent Hill game, okay? So what I'm getting at is everything is kind of lining up. I know a lot of people like to call me out, or a lot of people like to just kind of come in here and say, yeah, it's not happening, okay? But I get that if it doesn't happen tomorrow, people get upset because it's obviously nothing's happening. These are long games. We've been talking about this for over a year now, and this is kind of what leads it to us. We've had the Kojima arc. We've got a lot of different arcs. This is literally like a fairy tale story. It's got good parts, it's got evil parts, it's got, disappointing parts, it's got all of it. And that's literally what we're living through. But let me tell you, I believe all of it. I also believe, by the way, when they say outsourcing Metal Gear, well, we know, I guess we don't know, but there's the leak that Bluepoint, the makers of Shadow of the Colossus and most recently Demon's Souls, that is their next remake, that they're remaking the first Metal Gear Solid game, okay? So again, we kind of have heard that. Now we don't know, Konami didn't confirm it, but we're pretty darn certain based off of this report that they are completely okay giving their games out, not necessarily to whoever wants them, but they're definitely willing to listen. We also got a fun little tidbit that Konami actually went to Supermassive Games, makers of Until Dawn, and I believe it was at the time, before it became Dark Pictures, and they wanted them to make a Silent Hill game. It never happened, and then Supermassive ended up making this, this Dark Pictures game. So I would have preferred, actually, they made Silent Hill. Again, this was at the time of Until Dawn, right after Until Dawn. That would have been kind of right up their alley, I feel like. They haven't done the greatest job since then, in my opinion. And maybe they would have ruined Silent Hill because maybe they were always going to kind of take a downward trend, but that's just kind of aside. So I believe all of this. I do. This is not one of those Reddit threads. This is not one of those 4chan threads. These are pretty credible sources that are backing up and reconfirming, I would say, everything that we have heard that also sounded very credible over the last couple of years. Oh, and by the way, part of the title and one of the biggest parts of this is one of them will be announced this summer. So one of the Silent Hill games will be announced this summer. Now, we had heard from leaks a few weeks ago, maybe it was even a few months ago, that I believe it's the Sony one, the Sony exclusive one. That one is going to be announced this summer. Again, there's been some confusing parts. Remember, and now because we don't really know which Silent Hill either of them are working on and like what's the difference between them, it does make it a little harder to like figure everything out. But remember, we had the musician, the composer of Silent Hill, and he worked on the Medium. Okay, he's worked with Bloober Team, and he talked about how his next game is going to be announced this summer. It's a game based off of a franchise, or I think he said like it's a game that a lot of people are hoping to see. Now, what's weird is like, so he worked on the Medium. Is he doing Sony's, or is he doing Bloober Team's, or is he doing both? Because the one that gets announced this summer seems like it's going to be Sony's, not Bloober Team's. But you know what I mean? So, like, it gets interesting. Then you have the Kojima, again, we had the Kojima thing where, like, he was working on it, but then he stopped. Did Sony, like, have him come in to try and help Sony Japan, and it just didn't work, so he left it, but they still kept going? Like, again, there's definitely some weird things. One of the games, oh, by the way, one of the games, remember, originally a leak said it was supposed to come out last fall, like the fall of PS5. It was supposed to be a PS5 launch game, and it was supposed to be announced last summer, and now it's going to be announced this summer. Now, again, like, which one were they talking about? Well, again, Bloober Team, they said only over the last year have they been working on this, so I don't know if they'd be ready to show anything. So there is a lot of confusion when you have two games literally that's the same game, like off the same franchise, and you don't have that much, you have actually nothing concrete. It's all just like speculation, all people like talking about rumors. Things are going to get a little messy and a little confusing, but that's pretty much where we're at. Seems like two Silent Hill games, two Silent Hill reboot games, probably don't have anything to do with each other. One of them Sony exclusive, the other one not, the other one only Microsoft. That's actually, oh my god. Then you have, remember, so Sony, for the longest time, like obviously that Silent Hill situation is going on, okay? And that would be a PlayStation 5 exclusive. But remember, I think like 2 weeks ago, we heard talk of Microsoft, how Microsoft has approached both Sega and Konami, and they've approached Konami to basically do the same thing as Sony has done, okay? And I said at the time, I'm like, well, that's weird, because like, if Sony's doing it, then how can Microsoft do it? Well, if Microsoft goes to Konami and says, hey, we want to make a Silent Hill reboot, we're going to give it to Bloober Team. Sony goes to Konami and says, hey, we want to make a Silent Hill reboot, we're going to give it to Sony Japan. And then they're both making individually Silent Hill reboots exclusively for two different consoles. That is very odd, and I know that sounds, it sounds stupid. It is a stupid thing to do, but that's probably, I would lean towards, that seems more like what's going to happen. Now, Bloober Team isn't owned by Microsoft. They just worked out, the contract to make the Medium Xbox exclusive, but I think that's an interesting theory that would be kind of crazy, right? So that's where we're at. Hopefully this summer we get something. God knows which one it is. God knows when we're going to see the other one, right? But I think good news. The last couple of days have given us very, very, very good news about all of this stuff. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What the heck do you think is happening out there? Make sure, as always, you guys are subscribed, bell icon turned on. I do a brand new video on this channel every single day, and so I hope to see you guys for tomorrow's video.